Warning, warning, do not watch on an empty stomach. Warning, warning, do not watch on an empty stomach. Warning, warning, warning. There are few things I like more than good food inside of a good movie. No, I don't mean the king of Philly that you shoved down your pants and tried to sneak into the Grand Lake Theater, playing it off as if you are just that big. I'm talking about the food in the movies themselves. The ones that the characters are making, sharing, and best of all, eating. There are so many examples to pull from. Some entire films' story center around food. Some actors have built their careers on the backs of their appetite. And most movies are more than happy to include a bit, scene, or close-up that just so happens to make your tummy grumble like no other. But there is no other movie about food, whether it's chowing it down or cooking it up, quite as exquisite as Juzo Itami's 1985 film, Tampopo. So, in today's video, I will be making my case as to why Tampopo is the greatest film about food. The argument really boils down to, simmers down, melts down. Anyway, the argument is as simple as a bowl of ramen. Tampopo accurately depicts what it means to be a maker and appreciator of food, as well as poking fun at the ways that it's misunderstood, while elegantly displaying what is fundamentally a sensual experience of eating, all while, to be more subjective, being a nourishing feast in its own right. One which enriches you and fills you with the warmth of good food with good company. But before I can really get into all of that, let me first lay the groundwork of the story so you actually know what the hell I'm talking about. A concise synopsis of the movie is something like Tampopo, being structurally similar to a great meal, has an entree, or a main story, which sees two truck drivers stopping at a small ramen shop only to find it laden with problems. For one, the ramen stinks. The noodle pot's not boiling, the soup is bland, the pork is cut too thick, etc., etc. The shop and its owner, Tampopo, are terrorized by drunks who want nothing more than to start a fight, and Tampopo's only son gets beat up daily by a group of bullies. But not to worry, because the truckers Gun and Goro offer her something indispensable on her journey to become a professional ramen chef: critique. Through physical, mental, and technical training, spearheaded by Goro and involving a cast of characters that offer their own useful insights, Tampopo succeeds in finally crafting a bowl of ramen that checks all of the boxes. Delicious, cheap, simple, and able to be enjoyed and cherished by anyone. While this simple story would regularly be enough to satisfy the appetite of a hungry moviegoer, it is, like I mentioned, only the entree. Tampopo is a film with a soup, a salad, and plenty of other delicious side dishes that showcase and question the conventions and practices of eating. Whether it's an old master relaying his fetishized and convoluted 40-year-old technique of enjoying ramen, a young associate embarrassing his bosses through a display of gourmand expertise, or a Western man loudly enjoying his pasta, slurping to his heart's delight, while a pasta appreciation class learns the importance of remaining absolutely silent while eating. You can think of these side quests as pieces of evidence in one of Tampopo's greater thematic ideas, that food is fundamentally for amateurs. Here's Tony Zhao and Taylor Ramos of Every Frame a Painting explaining.
The word he calls them is shiroto, and Tampopo answers him using the exact same word. I like to think of her statement as a sort of thesis for the film, because at the heart of Tampopo is the idea of the shiroto, and learning how to appreciate things.
And while this is absolutely true, for example, like I mentioned in my description of them, the vignettes by and large are at the expense of whoever is taking the conventions of cuisine too seriously. But it isn't like the movie shies away from the idea that there is a right way to prepare a meal. While Tampopo states, "Why would you make a meal that an amateur could not appreciate?" there's a hidden, unspoken sentence that an amateur is still someone that wants to experience an exquisite meal. Otherwise, wouldn't they be happy just eating this bowl of sloppy ramen? It's because it takes an extreme level of craft and expertise to make something that an amateur appreciates as delicious and normal. Similar to the authority that film critics have, they don't need to know what an f-stop is or what type of diffusion is put in front of a light in order to form a coherent opinion about a film. Their value comes from their perspective as an audience member. as amateurs. That's also why Tampopo, the character, is able to rattle off flaw after flaw when it comes to the preparation that the ramen boys make for their ramen. The distinction Tampopo the movie makes is when the appreciation of craft starts to overshadow the sensual experience of eating. In this vignette, we never even see the food, only the bizarre decorum of hierarchy when ordering an elegant meal amongst superiors. But even this criticism of fetishizing craft and eating procedure isn't the end-all be-all. At the end of the day, the old man, the noodle slurpers, they still find themselves enjoying a good meal. But none of the other vignettes quite capture Tampopo the movie's interest in the physical gratification of the senses that food provides, quite like the ones involving the gangster and his partner. The couple opens the film when they sit down at a movie about to have an elegant meal when the gangster, played by Koji Yakusho, breaks the fourth wall, acknowledging the audience and telling a brief story about what might happen when you die. He says, "You watch your last movie, the movie of your life." This concept stays at the back of our minds when each time the characters return, their passion they have for one another is directly interwoven with the sensory pleasures of food. This is expressed best in perhaps the most infamous scene from Tampopo, where the couple passes back and forth a raw egg yolk between their lips, until finally... This might be a little too weird for some, for lack of a better word, but honestly, I think it's beautiful and illustrates the connection they feel between food, sexuality, and death. For them, food is what connects all pleasurable aspects of life, which is why when the gangster is finally shot dead and he sees the film of his life, he tells his partner a story of an experience of food connected with the death of a wild boar, something that he wishes desperately he could have shared with his partner. In his final moments, he's dreaming of food. But this isn't the only connective tissue the movie has between food and death. In another vignette, we see a woman on her deathbed, unable to move, yet somehow willed back to life, if only for a brief moment, to cook one last meal for her family, before collapsing, dead, after only a small moment of satisfaction. In this case, the sensory power of food, the pleasure it brings not only to those who eat it, but those who provide, becomes directly responsible for breathing life into someone only moments away from death. And while Tampopo the movie enjoys the expertise of a craftsperson, the authority of the amateur, or the sensuality of food and how closely it is linked to life and death, what makes Tampopo the best movie about food, for me, is just how good it makes me feel. Because think about it. What is ultimately what you want out of a great meal? Sure, you might say you want the most complex flavors. You might say you want the finest ingredients. But I would argue that the most important thing in a meal, or at least the most important thing in a meal worth having again and again, is satisfaction and comfort. That's why this movie is about ramen instead of caviar or some other piece of fine dining. And that's also why, after a few days of watching Tampopo for the first time, I knew that I immediately had to watch it again. There's also just something so undeniably warm and playful about the movie that leaves a smile on my face for pretty much its entire runtime. There's a distinct lack of ego with the film that so many other movies about food carry with them because they're sort of following in the footsteps of movies about great artists. But I think it's because Tampopo makes the decision to be warm, comforting, full of ingredients, yet most importantly, made to be understood by an amateur, that the movie is able to escape some of the self-aggrandizing tropes about ambition and no one else's understanding of the food that they make, etc., etc. Also, it's amazing that I haven't mentioned this yet, but the food in this movie is just so good. I just want to eat it every single time I see it. I blared the warning alarm at the beginning because truly, if you watch this movie on an empty stomach, it's gonna be a bad time. The first time I saw it, I actually had a bowl of ramen right in front of me. Even the simple fried rice that the mother on her deathbed makes has enough fat glistening on top of it that it could make the Sahara wet with desire. And so, in honor of Tampopo, I am here at the ramen shop with supposedly one of the best bowls of ramen in Los Angeles. And I am making sure to appreciate it the same way the 40-year-old master of ramen has taught me to.
ラーメンの正しい食べ方を伝授してくれるのだという。
最初はまずラーメンをよく見ます。ではまず箸の先でですね、ラーメンの表面を鳴らすというか撫でるというか、そういう動作をしてください。次に箸の先を焼き豚の方に向けてください。
はは、いきなり焼き豚から食べるわけですか。
いやいや、この段階では触るだけです。箸の先で焼き豚を愛おしむようにつつき、さてそれではいよいよ麺から食べ始めます。あ、
So, if you haven't already, please go watch Tampopo. It is very good. And if you have already, let me know what you thought of it down below. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to any one of these platforms. No plugin keeps the lights on, so you got to do it. Thank you to all the Any More OGs sticking around to the very end. I got to figure out something better to call you. But trust me, I know who you are. I see you down there. Go make yourself something delicious.